questions, comments from councilors?
That's where the other one.
All right. Do you want
Sarah, you're on.
So you've asked for a wish list budget, and I've given it to you. Any questions? Hopefully my explanation of the increases were thorough enough. We can start with payroll. This includes an additional full-time person and an additional part-time. And then I also added in slight pay raises for 4 employees in case there is no COLA. So it gets our part-time above minimum wage by a couple dollars. The benefits, so I've gone over benefits a couple times with Carrie, and they have to be this high just in case. It doesn't look like in years past we have ever spent the maximum amount on benefits, but you have to put it in just to plan for it. So that could be some savings there, but any adding a full-time person makes those benefits increase. Technology is the next biggest one that I had added to. We need a couple staff computers. It would be nice to have Microsoft 365 on our public computers. We are currently using a free WordPress site, so it would be nice to be able to have a paid WordPress site so that we have a little bit better of a website. And we would really like to add a self-check. It's something that we used to have, and then when we switched ILS, our library management system, the ones that are compatible are more expensive, so it just hasn't been replaced. Printing and advertising, I've increased that a little bit. We currently don't have anything professionally printed, so it would be great if we could have a couple things throughout the year professionally printed. Periodicals, we'd like to add back a few titles. Not many, maybe 3 to 5 would be great. I know that's something we get asked about a lot, is if we can have more periodicals. The electronic collection, so this is putting it back where it used to be, adding back in Overdrive, which it has the $2,000 annual fee, but $1,700 of that is for material. And then the other electronic collection we have a subscription to Freegal. Cloud Library already renewed this May, so we could look at discontinuing that next May, and that would be a $1,300 saving next May. And then additional content on Overdrive. Those are, I think, all of the categories I had put in increases for. Any questions? Yes, John.
Just starting at the top, the payroll increases for an additional full-time and then for additional hours. Do you get the sense that there is availability of staffing? If you had the money, could you find somebody?
Hopefully. I'm hopeful. We posted a temporary. We are kind of in desperate need right now, so I posted a temporary position that is advertised as through June 30th, and we have interviews this week, and that's for a temporary position. So we're hoping that with a full-time or a larger amount of hours for a part-time that we can find people. But
And for the part-time, you said increased hours to a bit over minimum. Is there like a benchmark for competitive salaries for that type of position? Do you know, or?
I have the part-time positions going up to start at $16 an hour, which is all right. I know they can make more other places in town, but hopefully, because it's the library and people like working there, we can find.
Good. That's kind of what I figured. There's like
Yeah.
community folks that want to
Yeah.
almost volunteer, get paid a bit, and
Yes, that's 2 of our existing part-time are actually retired, and they just work there because they love it.
okay.
Yes, Stacy.
So, if this budget that you're presenting, the total figure is 704,298, and then that's minus your revenue, so the part you'd be asking this city is 626,398? Am I understanding that right?
If we were to take the revenue out of it, out of the 704.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what's the number you're asking the city for? Is it the 704 or it's 626?
So I think, I mean, it'd be great to have 704, and then we could use our donations for other things, but I know that's a big jump from years past. I think things that we could easily pull out to pay for through donations would be taking out the materials. That's something that we've been paying for with donations. Taking out the dues and memberships, training, conferences, office supplies, printing and advertising, travel, postage. Programs aren't included. We don't even have a line item. It's not included in the 704. We already pay for programs out of donations. So I think if you took all of those things out, it'd be about 643. Yes, Michelle.
So, it's not that you're taking things out of your budget, you're offsetting your budget.
Yes, offsetting it with donations.
Right, so
Revenue.
what shouldn't be included in your revenue that's going towards expenses are donations for specific purposes.
Yes.
So it would actually, you wouldn't need to take anything out of your budget. This is your budget less your revenue.
Yes.
And then you need the appropriation for the rest of it.
Yes.
As long as there isn't anything in here where people have given you specific, it's almost like a grant, where they're saying this is for books, or this is for, very specific items, like a grant, and they're writing it as a tax deduction or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't be in here. If it's not, then you're correct. The appropriation, it would be the budget less the expected revenue. And that's not in here, is that correct? None of those specific
No.
grants. and
So
things
the
like that.
annual appeal, it goes towards the greatest need.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have a specific. We've just been using it for materials because that is
yeah,
What
our
you-
greatest need.
yeah. And we don't, for those type of things, that's up to you how you want to spend it. But,
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I looked back through the budget book back to like 2019, it looked like, that year, the budget was 697,033, and the city appropriation was 596,033. So actually, 697,033 in 2019 up to 704,298. It's actually not that much of a climb. Yeah, I just wanted to know what that number is that goes in that blue box.
So when I look at what you first gave us to this, and I know that you've increased your payroll, the numbers, it doesn't look like you have enough in Social Security or health insurance, and you've actually increased your.
Yeah, I've gone back over it with Carrie to make sure that it's accurate. So some of those were adjusted slightly. And that original budget, it had additional positions in it, just at a lower rate.
Okay.
But I think the problem is if she's using actuals from this year, those numbers are gonna be skewed because of Amy's and
Yes.
Abby's vacancy.
Abby's vacancies for so long.
The FICA tax needed, I'm getting 33,000.
That's what I'm getting too. So if you take those two top numbers and multiply it by the Social Security and
7.6
Medicare,
million.
it's, yeah. So that number is definitely
And
up.
they're already included, the health insurance line is actually already included in the admin budget for the health insurance on the benefit tab in section 4.
For the library it is?
So it's gonna have to come out of one or the other place. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's gonna look double.
Yeah, so you want to take it
Covered.
out of the admin budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weren't you telling me that had to be in the library budget?
It is, that's why she just said to take it out of the admin budget.
Oh.
And I don't know if the 108 that says the COLA raises is included in that.
It does. It
That includes
includes,
the library too.
If that's the case, Tony, is Social Security, Main State Retirement, all of those have library and water and wastewater? So those will all need to be filled out as well.
So can you, I'm not tracking that, so that's included, the part, the health, excuse me, health insurance is included in the admin budget as well as the,
Is but should not be.
is but should not be.
is that the only expense? What did
So
you
it'd be
say?
wastewater, water, and the library.
Oh, those are all in the admin, under, for the health insurance?
Probably the transfer station as well, because that's usually a separate budget line item.
Are they,
That's
are they
it.
a separate fund? Like the library is a separate fund, right?
Right.
Oh, wait,
Transfer station.
Yeah,
Transfer
I mean,
station's public works.
yeah, but.
I think it's just the libraries because it's a separate fund.
But in the budget itself, like their department budget actually has a line for health insurance, at least it did. So,
It doesn't.
doesn't anymore, okay.
So Sarah, do you have a miscellaneous expenses paid with donations and grants and programs paid with donations? It's $10,000. Is that, so, what is that? Sorry.
So I was going through all of the expenses out of the Fund 80 accounts in the past, this year and last year. I took out all of the materials that were paid, and these were the leftover expenses. So it was all kinds of random things that were coming out of those Fund 80 accounts. So for the coming year, there's kind of, some of those, there were some periodicals, there were some weird things. So I tried not to pay attention to what those exactly were and just focused on what I knew we could take out of Fund 80 for the coming year, and that a library of things is something that we want to do. So that and it's something that can be paid for with donations. And then the programs, 9,000, that's just an estimate of our wish list, what we would ideally want to spend on programs for a year.
But you've put it separate because it's not really part of the budget. It's
Yeah,
what
it
you're
doesn't
paying
have its
for with your
own-
extra money if you can.
Yes, it doesn't have it's never, at least that I've seen, it's never had its own line item with,
Is that because, are those the grants and things I was just speaking about?
yes, those are specific donations.
So that wouldn't be part of your budget, okay.
Yeah, but just so you know what's being spent,
Yeah.
it's there.
Right, it's like a little extra category of
Yeah.
stuff that comes.
So I'm just gonna stick it at the bottom.
Yeah, nope, that's perfect, thanks. So what did you say in 2019, the appropriations?
596033 for a budget that was 697033.
She's only asking for 626,398.
Yeah, right.
Yes, Steve?
So I have an easy question. And it's probably in front of me, but I cannot extract the information. What will the hours be if this budget passes? I know what you're adding. You're adding Monday, and you're adding the evenings. Does that put you to a 7-day schedule?
It would be 6 days, so
Okay, what-
Sunday would be closed.
Sunday would be closed and
Yes.
always has been closed?
Yes.
Okay, so that puts you to a 6-day schedule, which is optimal. Correct? Okay. So it's never been open Sunday?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So,
I wish it was open on Sundays.
We've had requests, I think staff would revolt.
Yeah.
But this gets you to a 6-day schedule like it was,
5 years ago, last year.
And Saturdays open till 2?
Open till 2.
Okay.
Something that I would like to consider that we need to talk about more with staff and the board is going more towards a seasonal schedule and having later hours on Saturday and closing earlier on the late weeknight hours. It's dark and freezing. We usually end up, or we've closed a few times early during the winter anyway because of ice or snow. So I'd like to stay open. Maybe next year, we need some time to think about it if we get new staff. Existing staff needs to have an input, but I think moving to a seasonal schedule would be something that could be really beneficial and having a longer Saturday, May to October.
Do we know, Tony, if the library is going to have a fund balance?
They should, with unfilled positions, at least. But I just went through their accounts actually for this year to just kind of look at these actuals and make sure that we're good. And there are several that at this point would appear that they might not spend the full balance, so there should be money put in fund balance this year, but they depleted quite a bit of it the last couple of years using it to offset the city ask.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to use it for operating.
Not all of it, but there's still some. I'd have to look back at the audit for FY21.
I wouldn't want to use it for operating because you're going to come off that cliff just like you do with the school department. But it would be good if there was a capital project that could be paid for with that. That would be.
And just, one of the things, fund balance, just in general, all departments, that's one of the challenges with not having the audit. We have not, as a council, had any votes about the fund balances. So it's all gone at the end of the year. Any fund balance that exists is all one big total that sits, it's not isolated to the library, it's not isolated to Public Works.
Except for the school?
Well, the school's separate,
Yeah.
yeah.
It should be for the library though, because the library is a separate fund, so in the audit, there should be a fund balance or
It's
a
not.
remaining.
It's not a separate fund. That's not captured within the general fund.
It's part of the general fund, just that Fund 80 is the special revenue restricted funds.
Yeah.
So anything for operations under the library goes under 10.
So there used to be a special column for the library.
There used to be under Manager Cole, it was changed at one point. There used to be a separate library capital fund, and that got rolled into the city, and then came through, capital requests all came through as they would, but there used to be an account that the library had, but that all got moved into just a general fund. So I only say that, not specific to the library, just so that there's awareness that general fund balances, we
need to
have
go back
no
through
idea
that.
what the dollar amounts are, and they're not tied to any specific area.
But you said they use their fund balance for the budget?
Last year, they used the remainder of their fund balance to make up the difference of
So they
what
must
the
have something.
appropriations were and what their budget was.
Yeah, they carried forward what was unspent, but at the end of the year, there wasn't a reconciliation of that.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversations around that.
Yeah.
And looking year-to-date, there's not gonna be much. Their only line item that's not close to being completely expended is their payroll, which would be expected, their full-time payroll because of the vacancies, but you're looking at 100,000 left of that right now, so.
The data usage, electronic collection, sorry, cloud, Kindle, there's so many data words here. Electronic collection, etc. Cloud library, Freegal. Is there a lot of data on amount of usage, how often that gets tapped, utilized?
Yeah, it's, if you ask anyone who has a hold placed on Cloud Library, they might be waiting over 6 months for a title. It's very heavily used.
So you're filling an obvious existing need
Yes.
there.
Well, and for many of us, I think, like Hoopla was
The
better than
loss
Cloud
of
Library,
Hoopla,
so like,
yeah.
I don't even try anymore most of the
Yeah,
time.
most people, yeah, people have stopped trying, and they'd go get a Blue Hill Library card, or somewhere else that doesn't.
So we're losing people there, it sounds like.
It's just it's a service that we should be able to provide.
I've always had really good luck with the books, the audio books and the new.
Good.
Yeah. I love it. I want to get to Bangor.
I know.
What's it for?
I listen to an audiobook every day. I would never exercise if I didn't have an audiobook.
Casey, I think you brought up the 2019 number, the bottom line, like in the high fives, low sixes.
Yeah, it's a little bit, if you look at, I'm sorry, I was looking here in this budget
Okay.
book, but you can also look here on this overall picture page. They're a little bit different. They don't 100% match up, but anyways. According to the budget book, in 2019, it looks like the total budget was 697,033, and then the appropriations was 596,033. You go to 2020. So if you look at the budget across, the budget is 697,000, 672,000, 648,000, 662,000, and our appropriation, the budget stayed somewhat stable, but our appropriations decreased. So 2020, we gave 561,872. 21, we gave 461,872. Last year, we gave 500,000. Anyway, that was where I found those numbers. Like I said, they don't 100% match up with the numbers on this page, but then I start getting dizzy with numbers, so.
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of the amount of increase over the last 5 years that this request would signify.
Yeah, I mean, in this book, the budget for the library in 2015 was 720,000. 2017, 694,000. 2018, 709,000. So it almost is like it's coming back up to what it used to be. That's what it looks like to me. And we've been the city council decided that the library should cost less, so it's been cut, but we're basically getting back up to what it was, which also gets us back up to the services that it was. To me, that seems good.
Or if we
Appropriate.
take the $140,000 in benefits that are already in admin and leaving there. Since they don't. So this is, no, I know. So, and it used, and I shouldn't say this.
'Cause you're saying they
because
used to be
it
there?
used to- Well, so it used to be that the library was a special fund because it was allowed to keep its fund balance to put towards other projects. Which is why their budget has the benefits and everything included, and no one else's budget has that, right?
Yeah.
So if they're no longer a special fund and they're being treated as a department of the city, then,
Then it actually doesn't make sense to ask them to take
Right.
their, yeah.
but
That's
the
a-
benefit of that before was, that was their expenditures, this was the revenue that they brought in specifically for them, so they were a special fund and they could have, so when they needed the roof redone and things like that, it could come out of that fund.
Yeah.
Or if there was a lot, it could go towards the operations, which is really a bad idea. But, so I just don't know, maybe we need to wait for the audit, but we're looking at apples and oranges, it
Yeah,
seems to me.
I understand what you're saying, yep. Because we used to let them use their fund balance, now we're not letting them do that. We used to
Yeah, they don't
make them
have a
take their
special fund.
benefits because they had that, now they don't have the
Right.
and they're doing their own benefits, so yeah,
Right.
none of that makes any sense, okay.
Right. Unless Tammy thinks I'm thinking completely wrong, but.
No, it all came up, the auditors actually are the ones who caught it, saying they shouldn't be a separate fund based on the charter and looking it over. It was something I had fought with them for years, and then it came to a point where, and then the council started getting involved in it, and then it came to saying, no, they're not their own separate fund. But up to that point, we said, okay, you can keep your fund balance, and then you can start using it for capital projects, and then offsetting the budget as well as how they chose to do it, so.
But you're saying
That's
the
how-
auditors say we shouldn't do that, we should treat it like all the other departments, in which case then we have to take the benefits out of the budget. We should take the benefits out of the budget, if we're gonna treat it like the other departments.
I'm not-
That would be doing more math again.
Just,
It's $140,010 or something like that.
just to clarify, numbers for numbers, leaving
We don't have to say it like
things,
that.
No, I was just kidding.
leaving things quasi-equal here. Comparing numbers to numbers from last year, never mind the revenues, last year, total department was 634,500. This year, your proposal is 704,298. That's an 11% increase. That's certainly less than most departments in the city, as far as increases go.
Over what time period did you say that?
Over last year.
I'm sorry?
I don't know that it's lower than most, it's lower than a few.
Well, I haven't seen too many that's under 11%. I've seen some 30s and some 20s and some 19s. And my point is that it's 11%. It's not, it's certainly, let's say, the middle of the pack, if you'd like. It's not huge.
It's not huge. And last year's potentially was artificially low if they were using fund balance to offset that
I mean,
as
it's
well.
11% in,
Or
unless I'm,
cutting
and I'm not
hours.
counting revenues, I'm counting just plain operating expenses one year to the next.
And that year though includes all the cuts they made, that they had to reduce hours and all of that.
Well, and let's, just for reference, last year was about a 39,000 roughly cut. That was the reduction last year in terms of what the city paid. So last year was not the place where there were big cuts. The decision last year was when it was closed on Monday after that $39,000 cut. That didn't happen until last year, so that's been in effect for 1 year. So just some context around, the cuts really came 2.5 years ago, 2 budgets ago, not last year. I think one of the things this raises, and again, it's not about the library, it's just about getting the big picture, is where are things going to be in terms of the budget? Because if we are at a place where all the benefits, health insurance gets carved out, we want to be clear about that, so we're not sitting around a table and the community isn't sitting saying, look, we cut the library.
Yeah.
We took $140,000 out of the library. If we move it, it's not coming out of the library. It's 6 of one, half dozen the other, but it's going to appear that way. So we just need to make sure we're really clear in terms of that process going forward, in terms of what that's going to look like and how we talk about it.
I mean, but we also need to be clear, because if that's true, the budget's overstated by $140,000, because we have those
Right.
benefits in 2 different places,
Yeah.
the same benefits.
Yeah, I think most of those line items, if you're saying that water and wastewater Which
Yeah.
definitely have to be separate because of
Right, and I
Prepared.
just, in my Excel, have confirmed that water and wastewater have theirs in their budget. And since Sarah has included that in the library budget, I've now adjusted the admin budget less those 3 departments and corrected it on the budget summary. Just so that they're not, in the final copy, they won't be double counted.
Awesome.
But it sounds like what we really need to do, if library is a department like every other, what we actually need to do is put that 140, 100 back in the admin budget, take it out of here, which would change this number from 704,298 down to 564,198.
I think though, for this year, because we need to talk to the auditors, because it wasn't a separate enterprise fund, it was a separate special fund. So it was kept, everything was kept separately so that we could have a fund balance for them. And it was in the audit, if I had an old audit, it was kept as a special fund. So it was separated, we knew what they spent, they looked at their, the gifts and things like that they had, and that was all, the library had its own page and description and everything, and then they had their remainder, which we call fund balance, but it was their remainder, but it wasn't a enterprise fund, it was just a special fund.
But if they
I'd
don't
have to
get
look at it.
that.
But if they don't get that now,
We should have made
but
them.
maybe we ought to, because they do have grants and things that they bring in for their own money that's specifically for the library.
And that has its own fund, it's Fund 80.
Fund 80,
So,
yeah.
Right, 80.
80, but it's part of the city checking account.
That's okay, as
Yeah,
long as
okay.
it's recorded. I mean, we only should have one, but as
It's
long as it's
restricted,
recorded.
it's not.
Right.
we
It's
can't-
restricted.
We can't get the money for other purposes.
Right.
It's
It's a
restricted.
restricted fund.
So am I able to see that, so I can check it with what I have?
That's up to
Like, am I able to see?
Finance can show you.
Well, we just found $140,000 for the budget.
More than that, because of
Yeah,
public
there's all
works.
kinds of other.
So it sounds like we heard your budget weeks ago, months ago, however long ago that was, and we said
It was years.
years ago, or we
How
said
feels like?
decades. And we said, well, the public's been emailing us. There's days, there's closures, there's, people want things from the library that they don't know if they're gonna be able to get, so we asked you to do the wish list, and now we have the wish list, and it seems like if we like it, we will have, appeased the public through your interpretation of what the library could provide them or what they want in terms of services, if that makes any sense. I don't know if there are any, specific things in here that I would not wanna see.
I think you did a really good job.
This is your library too. It's not mine, it's all of ours. I just happen to be the mouthpiece, but it's all of yours.
And the planner.
And you understand it, and what's possible
Well,
there.
and you've done a lot of, you just are new and you've had to do a lot of this work, brand new, so well done. Good job.
I love it. It's a special place. It really is.
So I guess kind of regardless of whether this whole question of benefits and fund balance or remainder, or whatever you want to call it, it just moves one way or it
One way or
moves
the other,
another.
yeah.
Yeah. Either they keep it in their thing and we keep that money in for it, or we take it out and we, yeah, sort of doesn't matter.
That'll be a discussion the council will have to have, if that's how they want to do it going forward. Just need to get this audit done.
And I believe that when the change was made, they had their assigned fund balance, so there was actually a line in the budget that said assigned. It didn't get, dumped into the general fund balance.
It looks like it was in 2021, because there was a carryover of 60,000. It doesn't show a carryover this
I
year.
thought that was ARPA.
No.
The 60,000
That was
was
just-
That
applied
was
to
a
their
carryover.
budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
21, but
Yeah.
it doesn't look like it was for 22.
No, because they didn't have any left.
They used it.
It was basically, they had, because that fund had been accumulating over,
Yeah,
as to your point, they basically kept that, and then it was being used until it was exhausted, but at the point that that decision was made, it didn't carry over to just that
Yeah.
fund. It carried over to the city, for the city to then,
So did that decision get made in 21? Like, it was a specific decision?
it
It was the
before that.
22 budget.
It was
In
before me.
19, it was,
so-
yeah,
I was like,
2019, I think.
I was here last
I
year,
know,
and it
I
didn't
think
get
it
made
was a
then.
council.
It says
Before
it's
me.
the 22 budget.
It was before you?
Yeah, no, it was a while ago.
So it was like the decision
I feel
got
like
made,
19.
but there was still money in it that
So they
we were
applied it.
basically letting them use,
Yeah.
even though the decision got made whenever.
Right, it was to
sometime.
keep that fund with the library, but to stop that practice.
Stop adding to it, yeah, okay.
And that, as Councilor Moat said, that was not just 7 individuals talking about it. It came out of there was an audit, there was the discussion about the use of the funds, how it was set up. It was a more involved
Yeah.
discussion. That's how it got to the council.
And that's the year that this became artificially low. Because it reduced the budget. Well, it says 60, but it shows 100. And that's when it went from 561 to 461, and and now we're trying to bring it back up again, but it was, because they used fund balance for
Right,
operating.
just like the school thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
you've got to make it up at some point, or
Yeah.
Well, and the hard part too.
reduce services is what we did.
With these budgets is that we look at budget to budget to budget. We're not looking at budget to actual, budget to actual, budget to actual. So, I mean, you could have $1 million budget, but if it only costs $600,000, you compare the $1 million and then you say, oh, well, we need $1 million. That's part of this process too, is in
Yeah.
terms of what was actually spent all along. And I'll use the school, I mean, that was the issue with the school, is that huge fund balances were carried forward, which means that that was being collected by the taxpayer, then going into the fund, and so that's part of I think what councils should reconcile at some point is to really be able to drill down at what are we actually spending this year based on what we budgeted? Are we comfortable with that? Is it too much, too little? What's that happy medium? And not just for the library, this is the entire
The entire
budget. We should be able to do that, and we haven't been able to do that, so.
Just to point out something Casey said earlier, the total department cost in 18, I don't know that we said it with numbers, was 709, not counting revenues and all that, it was 709. So this proposed budget that you have is the same level that it was in 2018. That's amazing to me. Totally amazing that in today's world, you can keep a total cost where it was in 18. No one else has done that. Congratulations to everybody.
So you were just saying, we have like budget to budget to budget, but not budget to actual budget to. So what keeps us from being able to do that?
I think it's just where we've been just with, my feeling is it's just the turnover that we've had in terms of just the accounting
Yeah, right.
component.
It's just needing to have those
It's not
numbers.
lack of effort or will on anybody's part, it's just that
Yep.
it's been difficult with the staff turnover and everything. And that makes it hard to be consistent and to get things in the right chart of accounts and all of that, so. It's just, I think that knowing where the city's headed, I think that's definitely going to be changing, and I think next year, the council will have the ability to see what's going on a month-to-month basis, and then by year end, a really good picture of what was spent versus what was budgeted, and that just helps in terms of the budgeting process.
Also, along those same lines, I would think that if the audit, I think private accounting and public accounting is really in a tough spot right now. But I think that comparison to financials that are more updated, real financials, some sort of a flow chart that compares the number from the financial statement as opposed to not having that. I think that's a big factor, year after year after year, we could have that information. Not just with your department, but everybody, if you take the last 5 years' financials, the real numbers. I think that does help.
To see when it's quiet around that.
Yeah.
Run away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Did anybody want to speak at all?
I'm just really great on the board with Sarah. I just want to say she's doing a fantastic job. And we're very pleased, and the library, as you've all heard from your emails, is an essential part of our community. So we appreciate all the hard work that you've put in and asked her to come back with a proposed higher budget. And we would be so appreciative of any of that you award us. And she'll do a great job with it.
My name is Melanie Zader. I've been a member of the Friends of the Library for 20 years. Last week, I did a presentation for the sitting at the town meeting at Surrey because I used to live there. And they just gave double the amount of money that they used to give when I was presenting regularly to them. And it's very important to all the sending areas, even if the town councils don't vote the amount of money that the library requests, even if the town council don't act as though the library is important, it's very important to the citizens of those towns that this library is the hub that it is. I have friends in Hancock and Goldsboro and Unionville, and they all use this library. Some of them have people who come down and volunteer at the library. So this is bigger than Ellsworth. And I'm sure that people have told you that how important it is for people who don't live in Ellsworth that the library continues to function at a high level. Thanks. Are we done? Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
We're not done.
You guys don't want to listen? It's good time.
But that's just an adjustment.
All right. We have heard a lot of information, and
Thanks, sir.
and what we said we wanted to do tonight is to start a discussion in terms of the big discussion, an overview of going back into the budget, talk about if you have specific areas of interest, recommendations, questions, concerns, statements, all of that, so that we can kind of keep inching forward with the process. We'll continue that discussion Thursday night for an ongoing discussion around kind of the bigger picture. And then next Monday, the 8th, we have the special meeting for the school budget vote. So with that, this is a stream of conscious. You can go wherever you want with this budget.
Spoken
Jump
word
in,
poetry.
yeah, just go. Whoever wants to start.
Can you just explain,
There's no explanation for any of it.
the situation with the audit? I don't actually understand, like, in really simple terms. Can you tell me, like, what it is and who does it and when it normally comes back and why it isn't back now and what that means?
Do you want to take that, or do you?
I've been involved in 3 audits and none of them have come back on time. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know when it should be due. But the very first one was during COVID and they lost all their employees, and it was later than this before we got that, and that was for 21. And then 22, excuse me, for 20. And then 21 was a new audit firm, and staffing issues in our finance department created some delays, but then also with a new audit firm, they uncovered things that the other audit firm had just glossed over the years, and so they started digging into some of those, and once you start peeling back a layer of an onion, you just start getting more and more. And so this is the same audit firm that we used last year. It was supposed to be they were supposed to be done in December, and then it was January. Again, staffing issues delayed our ability to provide them the information that they need to complete the audit, and now here we are in May, and
So
it should be done.
when did we get it the last 2 years?
FY '21 we received in November of last year, and it was about November the year prior for the FY '20 audit.
It's,
Yeah, so it was like,
Yeah, like,
yeah.
By a year, by about a year.
Generally, with a July 1 fiscal year, generally an audit's going to be done late November, December.
Yeah.
That's usually when you can expect to have an audit
and in this
back.
case, it was a whole year later than that
Yeah.
actually came.
And that was due not to city, that was the firm itself, with some issues. I think one of the complicating factors for the city is that there are a lot of accounts, there are a lot of places where things need to be recorded, money in, money out, all of that. And when the city lost true accountants, that created some challenges in terms of, and Tammy can speak to this probably better than I can in terms of that issue, but if you don't know where things are supposed to go, when you're supposed to debit, when you're supposed to credit, when you're supposed to reconcile, and keeping that up, the longer it goes, the harder it gets to track. And that's part of what the auditors found was, as they're going through the accounts and testing them to see, okay, do you have all this information? Oh, we're missing this. Then they ask city staff for that information, and then it's digging because it's new people that haven't been involved with it. So that's contributed to some of that, which is just kind of, it's just been a series of, if it's 1 year where you lose some staff and you replace, you might have one delay, but it's been the series of issues that have just compounded it and that's, as I said earlier, I think that's what's contributed to some of this not having the ability to have information readily available. All the auditors that I've been involved with have come back. They haven't found material deficiencies, issues in terms of we don't know what we've done with the money or anything like that that's come in. It's not that, it's more just getting it in the right bucket, recording it appropriately, and that's the catch-up that's been happening. That's my perspective. I don't know.
But the issue is though, if you don't know what your fund balance is, and you don't know what's encumbered, I mean, it's hard to ask for encumbrances for the next year if you don't know how much money you have to encumber. We don't know if, I'm hoping that we're right on budget and that we've used the encumbrances from last year appropriately and all of that, but until you have your audit, it's really hard to be able to make good decisions for the council. You know, when they're saying we're going to use fund balance for this, or this was budgeted, so we're going to pay for, a capital improvement.
And you're just going blind.
And you're going blind because some of it was left over from last year, but did we encumber it? That's the type of things that we're kind of waiting for. So hopefully this is the last year that we'll have to wait this long. That now we have,
Well, we're actually, you're finishing up 2021 now?
22.
22. So
Right,
23,
yeah,
if they
23.
start it, we should have it December. I mean, even if it comes January, February,
We're
it's
just
okay,
starting that whole process.
but going to May
Well, because
is
at least you
difficult.
have it when you're in this
Exactly.
moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We know what we have, so.
No, like internally reconciliations and stuff.
Yeah.
We're starting that, yeah.
But no pressure, man.
Yeah, no pressure
Yeah,
at
man,
all.
come on.
I don't feel it.
It was, I went
Welcome
and
to
talked
the
to.
city.
And I don't want to be rude, but I don't think I have met who you
No,
are
hi,
yet.
we have not met.
Okay.
I'm May Debbie.
She's an accountant.
Yes. I went and talked to her the other day. I was talking accounting terms. She got it. It was so exciting.
So, you were going to give us a list of the changes that you made to the budget?
you gave two?
I did not. You want copies?
Oh, yeah, they should have copies. I'm sorry, I thought you were making
That's
copies.
okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I can start before you have the copies, but just going down through, I mean,
Because it's gone up again, so.
well, I mean, the school's up, now the library's up, other departments are up, so, I mean, I'm kind of at a loss at this point. I've gone through this budget and trimmed every little extra that I could possibly imagine could come out of the budget for operational costs. I guess the big things that I took a look at this time through was in admin, I just cut some training and some conference and meetings.
Could I
Miscellaneous.
interrupt you? Where are you getting this data? Where are you?
This is what she's going
Oh,
to
she's
copy.
gonna go get it, okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
To the tune of $6,500 out of the city manager's budget. Finance department, we reduced training slightly, office supplies, office equipment, and one salary was reduced for a total reduction of 10,000. Joint office supplies, we reduced 1,000 for a total of 17,500 out of administration reductions. For public safety, the building lease was moved out of the police department and into city properties. And we reduced it by 3 months because the projected move-in date is not July, it's being pushed out to October due to materials, waiting on materials. I reduced the police training budget by 5,000 to 35,000. And that justification for that was we have the AL Fund program that we can use to help with that reduction. And also, being full-staffed, we only have one person this year to go to the academy, which is a change from previous years, so hopefully that staffing level will maintain. Conference and meetings reduced from 5,000 to 3,000. Reduced the uniform and clothing from 40,000 to 35,000 for a total reduction in the police department for 12,000. Fire, we corrected some payroll issues. Training reduced from 30 to 25,000. Again, they can utilize the AL Fund grant for additional training. Admin training, reduced that from 4,000 to 2,000. Scott's attended a lot of training this year, so they shouldn't need a whole lot more. Uniforms and turnout gear, we reduced that by 5,000 to 40, from 40 to 35. Minor equipment reduced to their actual budgeted request, removed the 10% price increase that he built into that request for a total reduction of $15,000. From dispatch, we just removed $500 for office supplies. Street lights and traffic signals, we reduced the power based on the solar savings. So from street lights from 94,000 down to 75. We're also anticipating potentially the LED conversion, which would further that savings. And traffic signals from 20 down to 15, so just a $5,000 reduction for the savings because of the solar. So total public safety reduction is $195,556. But again, part of that savings is just the moving of the building expense out of the police operation budget and into facilities. Maintenance of property maintenance, that's where the miscellaneous property, that's where the police department lease was moved to, so that actually increased from 70 to 175. Public Works, many of you have probably heard me state already, they currently have two vacancies in Public Works, and third vacancy in the transfer station. So we haven't had a ton of luck filling vacancies in highway over the last couple of years. So I think that we can, with the 2 vacancies that exist, we're gonna struggle to fill those 2 vacancies. So I think putting this position off to a half-year position, so for start of January 1 for that new position will be fine. I think we'll be in good shape. If we're able to hire 2 to replace the 2 that have left, we can hire for them to a start date, so we'll go through the hiring process before January, so have a start date of January 1, so they can, be there for the majority of the winter and the plowing. Water and wastewater, both departments, we just reduced their fuel based on actual consumption from this year. We locked in a fuel price of $3.14 for next year, so we were able to do some calculations and get more accurate figures for their fuel, and their power accounts were already reduced slightly for solar savings. For a total city reduction of $135,689. And capital improvement, we took a look at capital improvement. The library roof, we reduced that to the actual quoted figure of $35,000. Dredging, we removed the dredge from the capital based on, based on conversation with Lisa about the actual time frame for the dredging. So she spoke to the Army Corps of Engineers in in August. We were told that the estimated cost would be $4 million, of which the city would be responsible for 20% or $800,000. Of that 10%, $400,000 would be due upfront before final design is completed, and 10% would be due at end of construction. So for a timeline, they said at least another year for the feasibility study and dredge management plan. Then final design would begin in spring 2024, with construction in 24, 25, or maybe even 25, 26. So if we don't budget it this year, I think we'll probably have time to budget it for FY25 to meet this timetable for their, because the 10%, the first 10% is due, we would have to pay before final design is completed, which they haven't even begun yet. So that's a potential $400,000 reduction in capital.
Can I just ask a quick question? Other properties that we lease, that all goes under city property, not under the department who's leasing it?
Yes.
Well, we don't lease it, the city does, the police department's the building that the city's leased.
Okay.
The water department has a lease, but that's an enterprise, so it's under the water department, not under the city.
Okay.
Well, the highway does now, so,
Lease.
no, never mind, it's the water. Never
Yes,
mind.
water.
How does the school handle their leases? Are they in the department? Must be.
It's in the school department.
That's it there.
Right,
Yeah,
right, but
Their chart of accounts is way different than ours.
right, but they must have the bus lease and the transportation side, right?
And so the other potential reductions in the capital, we looked at possibly removing the $35,000 for the electrical sign. And then there's been conversation about leasing of the vehicles,
the capital improvements of $3,114,366 then are, So 1.9 for local roads.
After those changes, for local roads and capital, I have 2,714,366.
Is that on the new sheet you just gave us? No, so that's gone down, because you have 3,114,366 on here.
Can you say that number again?
2,714,366.
And that's in part because you just took what you took out earlier,
Correct.
What do you mean?
right? Right, there were double the benefits.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was capital.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking capital. But yes, I've corrected those health insurance
So that's,
numbers also.
So,
So that was capital you just gave.
That includes removing the 400, does for
It does, it
treasurer.
removes the
Okay.
400, it removes the sign, it moves the server lease to our debt category, and reduces the cruisers to only the purchase of the equipment, not the actual purchasing of the vehicle. Remove the dredging, reduce the library.
and the thing about cruisers reduced purchase to equipment only, that's like if we go to the lease thing
Right, the lease,
instead of.
the lease costs are in the debt category as an estimated figure, so if we purchase, we'll have to readjust all of those back into capital with a purchase number.
So those changes, including the change to the capital improvement, what does that put the mill rate to?
17.58.
But
Sorry,
that does
what's
not
that?
have library figures.
No,
so,
please hold.
Please hold.
Such a moving target.
Because we didn't have, well,
Like
when we
that
did
kind
the
of-
survey,
I didn't have
we didn't
this,
have
we
library
didn't go up
figures.
that high.
so-
That's what I,
And talking about the police lease, I just wanted to ask a question. It seemed when Enterprise was presenting to us, it seemed that they were taking some of the, and maybe I interpreted it wrong, but it seemed like they were taking some of the value of the current assets and putting it in that lease.
Yes.
Do we know what the numbers would be? That skews the numbers. Do we know what that would be? I'm sure it's gonna be a value to the city. But when you take that asset and reduce that lease with that asset cost, that's kind of fuzzy math in my book. That if you had a lease cost, not counting the asset that they're gonna take, what those numbers would be. I think that's a more realistic number in that approach.
So, don't quote me on these, because we're in a holding pattern with the leasing, getting specific leasing information, because we're waiting for the auditors and finance to tell us what contract we have to go with, whether we have to go with the full value contract or the one that has the 10%
Residual?
residual. Yes, thank you. So once we have that confirmation from the auditors and from finance, then we'll know which price we have to go with. But we got a price for 2 Tahoes for the police cruisers, just 2 Tahoes, because you had mentioned about 2, and with no trade-in, so no value there. And it was, what did I tell you earlier?
29,100.
29,100 for just 2 Tahoes to rent.
Well, it
to
still proves
lease
to
the
be a
2
great
Tahoes.
value, never mind our assets that we have over here. In my
Yep.
memory.
Yep.
It proves to be quite a
And
it's
I-
not much of an asset when it's.
And I've asked them, yeah, and the ones that we were looking to trade, so the 5 we were looking to get rid of, there's very little value in any of them, because they all have over 100,000 miles. 2 of them, two of them aren't even police cruisers. There are detectives' vehicles that are not, they don't have any, anything special about them. In fact, the pickup truck, I don't even think you can get inspected, so it's like, has 0 value. But, I've asked Enterprise for lease costs for the 2 pickup trucks that are in this. So the $62,000 pickup truck for the highway department and $62,000 pickup truck for water. So I'll be getting lease bids on those 2 vehicles as well as the cruisers for a final consideration for the council.
Can I ask, what's the issue with the residual value, that the auditors don't like it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I was confused with that
It's
as
a
well.
question of how it impacts something, debt, something.
Oh, it is.
If anything, I was thinking that it had something to do with meeting our, oh my goodness, they're just, the tax exempt qualifications, but still.
That's not be able to.
It's $5 million, and then small issuers, 10 million, so it.
In the
just
private
seems a little-
world of business, there is leases with residual values are listed on balance sheets. Leases with determined or Schedule A values are off balance sheet and on profit and loss statements. And I bet you'll find that's where you're going. That to decide if it goes on the balance sheet, which shows the debt, which hurts, or it goes on the I'm private, I'm sorry, P&L statement, which picks up in the expenses and is off balance sheet, better bonding, less debt, et cetera. It's a complete operating expense.
And I think you're right, because there's a new
Gas fee.
advisory that has come out that starts this year for nonprofit, which does that. It takes all leases and it requires a whole new way of accounting, which it goes, I'm pretty sure it goes to the balance sheet as a result of that. So you have to look at 5-year, 10-year. So that's probably.
Yeah.
GASB 87?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or that is-
I don't know
it's easy.
the governmental terms, but certainly off balance sheet is where, I would think, where we want to be.
Yeah, so we're waiting for that answer from finance, and then we'll move forward with getting specific lease figures on vehicles, multiple vehicles.
But I wonder, for a municipality, if that matters as much, that 10% residual, if it reduces the cost of the lease, because you have a residual. And it also provides, at the end of the lease, it's actually less, you've got less value that you can bring forward if you have a residual, but it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the
It's
other,
going to be changing every year as well,
right?
with new leases.
But if you have a
so-
stated amount, in private world, if you have a stated amount of Schedule A value, as opposed to a percentage residual.
Right.
I think that's where the difference comes.
Yeah, no, yeah, but it is. I just wondering if it matters to us one way or the other. I think the
I would
auditors
think
would be
off
the
balance sheet would be like you
Well,
said, the accounts.
Well,
I think
we don't worry about
initially-
taxes or banks.
I think initially, when you're looking at just a handful, it is probably not as impactful.
Right.
But when you get to the
Yeah,
point
that's
where you're
true.
leasing your entire fleet, all your
Too much
cruisers,
debt.
all your pickups, then I think, then you're looking at a much more
Yeah.
impactful figure, so.
Yeah.
Material enough.
You're exactly right, yeah.
I just want to pause and ask Councilman, do you appreciate us diving into the accounting world and having this kind of conversation?
Nerds.
It's probably painful to, right?
I know, we're struggling. You're not helping us.
Some of it, I'm like, I keep going, I need to go see Tony. I'm trying to stay up here.
Made the adjustment with the library figures, and that brings you to 7.62,
17?
on 7.62.
So what I have is a total amount to be raised is 24,855,542.
I'm sorry, can you
My
say that?
my thing won't go up to billions.
24 what?
855,542 is what I have.
Will you just say that number one more time? I'm sorry.
It's,
That's the amount to be raised by taxes, that
Yeah.
line.
And that's taking out the 400,000 in capital improvements, the $140,000 that was in twice for the library benefits, plus adding the library increase.
And is the 17.62, what, is that based on
Current.
evaluation of?
It's a 5% increase
5%?
on the valuation that I got straight from assessing.
Ah.
So that's where he's estimating.
Okay, that's a 5% increase, he's in. So it's almost a 2 mil increase. And that means 2 mils equals, anybody can tell me how much that is on a, say a $250,000 house, because it's more,
I did the math the other day, it was a couple $100, I think, when you were in.
Was it? I need that thing up here.
So last year, that tax bill would have been $3140. This year, it's $3524.
On a $250,000.
And that, I mean, that's, that got the school number, that's got everything. The school was a huge increase over last.
So that's about $400 on 250,000.
Oh, it's, you were doing it on 200,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
So
on a
I'm,
200.
yeah.
So
On
that's,
200.
that's,
Do a
if your
250,
house
that's a
last
lot.
year was valued at 200,
This year it'd be like
You would-
205.
480
it's gonna
bucks.
go up a little bit.
210 this year, right?
480,
be $480
On 200,000,
addition.
250.
on 250.
Someone would be paying almost
Be
$500.
210, wouldn't it, Tom?
Yeah, 210. So that brings it up. So a $210,000 house this year would have a tax bill of $3,700.
As opposed to last year?
At 200,000 would have been 31.
3140.
31.
Yeah.
So it's 600.
Substantial.
$600.
760.
I mean,
So,
this does include the capital being reduced, like Glenn said, without the dredge and some of those other costs, so
It does include that.
it does.
Okay.
So can we go over what it does include? So I'm looking at this, I've got the Moore Center roof,
Yes,
City Hall chimney repair, City Hall painting, and the fire department window replacement.
yes.
Okay. And then the library's been reduced to 35,000?
Mm-hmm.
Based on a quote.
Yeah. And the highway, the new compactor,
Mm-hmm.
the patch trailer,
Mm-hmm.
the pickup truck,
Yes,
and then the garage is the bathroom update and the overhead doors.
yes.
So that's 274,500, because nothing was cut from that.
But might be a fleet. Is that one of the trucks that might get leased
Right.
instead?
So that might be leased.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the new navigation boat for the watershed.
Yep,
And then the new MSL office of 18,000.
yes,
Streetlight conversion to LED.
yes,
Server software,
yes.
server hardware, and took out the sign.
I took the hardware, hardware's been moved to the debt category because it's a lease, just like the last server lease.
Okay.
So that brings IT to 53,000 for their request.
The electronic sign. You took the
I
sign
removed
out.
the sign.
The transfer station has the forklift and the loading ramp project.
$60,000 total, yep.
We took out the dredging.
15,000 for cribbing.
Rescue airbags for the fire department.
15,000.
The cruisers, we took, did we take the cruisers out and just put the lease in?
So I have
Under
just
debt?
the cruiser equipment in there, it's 55,000.
And then move the
The
lease to
the
the debt.
lease is in the
section.
debt category.
Okay.
So that's a total manager recommendation of 725,024.
And then 190 for local, 1.9 for local roads.
Yes.
I need that.
And that comes to 2,668,866.
How, 725,024 and 1.9 million?
Yep,
Should be 2,625,024. If you're 725,024 is,
then 1.943842.
oh, I just hitting 1.9 on here.
What is the local roads?
1943842.
1943.
3842.
That's the local roads part. And can you say what the other number, the other capital number was?
725024.
It's the manager recommendation.
So the Okay,
Have you
so
ever seen a
one,
council
I'm
board
sorry, what did you
involved
say
with
the
the
number was for local? I only had 1.9 million.
1943-842.
The Apollo 13.
We're off by 3 inches.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question, ARPA funds.
That was one of my questions.
So, oh, I'm sorry, do you want to ask it?
Not at all.
So, things like, I don't even, I haven't taken that course in ARPA funds.
Here's your sheet.
So, as far as some of these expensive, like the Moore Center roof, can that be, where it's a community center and daycare, can that be done with ARPA funds? How are we doing this? We haven't, I know we haven't had the discussion about ARPA funds, but is there a plan for them and how much do we have?
The one caveat about the ARPA funds that we have to be mindful of is that you can't reduce what you've spent in the, so we're locked into that. So it then has to be applied to additional expenses. Is that fair to
Right,
say?
so like capital improvements, it can't be operating funds.
Right.
Right, but it could be capital, right?
Yes, I don't know if the roof would fall on, I don't know how, I mean, I'd have to go back and look, I don't think you could do a roof repair with ARPA funds.
One of the big sort of caveats was that it had to benefit a large group of your community. And I don't know, I mean, it's a community center, but how much of the community does that?
Well, a lot of senior citizens, and it's
And I-
used for events all the time.
And I don't know if, like, a facilities, I'd have to look back and see if anything facilities was.
I have my
No,
notes that I took from our from the conference that they gave. What can you do with the money? And he said the biggest thing was number 6, replace lost sector income up to $10 million, which we don't have $10 million in anyways. $10 million for general government services, public safety, roads, bridges, facilities, so maybe parks and utilities.
And roads and bridges?
Mm-hmm.
General government services. Treat it as if it were a general fund, is what I wrote.
Now, one thing, Jason did email me, and Jason said that his MS Office and the server software fall under cybersecurity, so those could be covered, those could be funded with ARPA.
What,
And how much do we have? It must be like
You're up.
700 or 600.
Do we know how much we have?
Under the revenues, there was a duplicate entry that made it look like we had double the amount. So have to reverse that. But we're looking at about almost $900,000 for received. And then this is a snapshot of the expenditures that we've had in fiscal '22 and '23. The top highlighted part is, you can see, is under the revenue fund. That was items or invoices that were incorrectly coded to the revenue account instead of our expenditure account, so those should be added into the expenditure account, which is the 50002. Oh, here's another one.
Oh, for you.
Oh, no, this is,
Oh,
there's
okay,
7 of
we
them.
can share.
Here, I got you.
That's right.
I didn't know if you needed one.
No, I know it, I know it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for fiscal year '22, those expenditures are all for payroll. And then fiscal '23 has basically ambulance expenses for the fire department.
So we purchased that ambulance with ARPA funds?
No.
Some of the equipment.
175 of it was from the band,
Okay, then, so the 48,800
is equipment.
is the equipment for it?
Well, and, yeah, because the ambulance was a little bit more than 175, so it was the
Okay.
remainder of the ambulance and
Yeah, there was a part of the ambulance purchase that went from ARPA, but the other one was from a capital fund.
When are they gonna start using that?
as soon as their licensing gets finished.
So, so what is the balance? Do we know?
We, at this moment, because there are issues with the amount that has been improperly coded to the revenue account, not entirely positive on that, but I can get back to you on that.
Should be right around 600,000 though.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to spend $600,000 this year by any means, but I just think that
Yeah.
if there are things here that we're doing that are one-time expenditures, and can be paid for with the ARPA funds, do we have a deadline for spending the ARPA?
Yeah, we have to allocate them by
24.
24,
Spend by
fiscal year
26.
24, and spend them by 26. So you do need to look at that fairly closely.
How
'cause you
about
really only
obligate
have
by
one additional.
27, spend by 28? That's not right?
I don't believe so. I can check.
Unless they've changed it.
Which is-
It's
which is
on my
possible.
page, so I don't
Video
know what I
that-
was thinking.
There's a video that we could watch. Can I get a copy of that? I think I'd like to watch that video.
It's on the, probably on the MMA's.
Yes, me.
Yeah.
It's on MMA's website?
I can get the link and send it to you.
I think the link was sent to us.
I sent it once, yeah, but I,
Yeah.
I think the rules have changed a couple of
They
times,
have.
too.
Well, that's because he came and
Yeah.
talked to us last September.
You know, the other piece that's, I think is missing, we talked about this, but not having a capital items and a clear direction. I'll use one example that it is absolutely going to hit next year. It's not the city side, it is on the school side, but we heard about the track. The track has to be done next year. There's no, they've been pushed off, they were very clear, it can't be used. That's a city-used facility, that's not just the school. So, all these things that we have, that's gonna hit next year on the school side, which will hit the taxpayers and will drive up the mill rate and all of that. I would prefer having these capital items spelled out so that we can vet them and say, this is the best use of those funds. Even though it might not apply this year, it gives us a perspective as a city to look not just short-term, but long-term, and make decisions to keep things leveled out. And not end up artificially, you know, if we, and I know you're not saying use all 600,000, but if we use all 600,000, we will deflate the mill rate this year, but next year, it's just gonna go up. There isn't gonna be any more funding, and it seems like,
But if you do a little every year, you're going up a little, and you're not going up 2 mills this year and then keeping it level next year.
but if we have some of those big-ticket items that have been neglected,
But if everything costs more every single year and we just sit on this money, aren't we just not getting what we could get out of it? That's my only fear, is we're just like sitting here on it while everything
I mean,
costs
I'm
more.
looking at this, and we spent $47,000, I don't know what that is, trans.
That's under payroll.
So we used payroll.
Hazard duty pay.
Hazard duty pay. I mean, if we view, and, I mean, we needed the ambulance. And I think that's a really great thing, but if we keep waiting until we have the audit back and don't use any of it on some of these capital improvements, I don't know,
I agree with both of you. I'm not saying not to use it. I'm saying it would be
Don't
nice
use
to
it
be
all.
able to, or to know what's hitting next year.
To have a big picture.
If,
Yeah.
you know, I would prefer to spend that money, get the track fixed, pay for it now, knowing that it's gonna hit next year. And it does, because it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whether you spend it on this or you spend it on that. But it would make it for a better conversation to be able to say, here are those things that are gonna hit this year, next year, it's going to happen, and, otherwise, we just get in that pattern of things not getting done.
I agree, but even the Moore Center roof replacement, and I know some people just don't think that center is used for anything but the Y, but it is actually, it's a very popular place, that we don't see it as much because the Y is part of their rent. You know, they schedule everything, but that building is being used constantly, and it's not just the senior center, although they use a lot of it, and it's not just the Y, it's people using it for other events. The Rotary uses it. I mean, there's a lot of different people that use that. And there's a lot of senior citizens that use that and depend on that building for their coffees, that they do a lot of their physical therapy there. They do, they play games in the gym and things like that. It's a community building. And it would be nice if it was lost.
And we have a huge investment, I mean.
Yeah, and it's an historic building
We
for the
spent,
city.
as a city, a lot, and we're paying for it, we're paying a lot for it, so to not maintain it would be absolutely, I mean, and, you know, we'd be wasting our well-earned dollars on something if we are not gonna maintain the facility, so.
No, absolutely.
So the newest rule is you have to obligate your funds by December 31st, 2024, and they must be spent by December 31st, 2026.
Okay.
So we could do that outside of budget season as a
Yes.
separate
Yeah.
agenda item.
And I think it's a great idea because the school departments now come with their list, and we have kind of a list. But that was one of the things we had talked about after the budget's over and we get this done, that we can sit and not have just a list, but a plan. Actually
And if
have-
you
not
go
wait
to
till
Maine
next year.
Municipal's website, there's like
Exactly,
an
don't wait
info
till budget
packet on
season.
ARPA with links to the federal websites and all
Yeah.
of that.
With something like the track, I imagine that would cost more than the remainder of the ARPA funds.
I think in
fix.
Amy's presentation was $500,000.
Yeah, I think
It's
So
gonna be
maybe
more than
not.
that,
So,
because they have to,
About-
they have to
They-
take the whole track up.
They gotta dig it right up. It's not
Yeah.
just to resurface.
Lay a new bed. I bet you're looking more close, more like $1 million.
Do they have to do, they do have to
They
lay
do,
the bed and
yeah.
everything?
That's
Yeah, and
what I was told.
I don't wanna, I'm not suggesting, but I just would use that as an example of one of those community projects that's not just a school. It really is a community, so it was just an example of,
It's a good,
Figured it.
it's worth considering the overall cost, because if it's difficult for this council or the next council to pay the remainder of a project, even if we're getting, say, 600,000, but the remainder is double that, you know, that might be a difficult lift still.
I mean, the reality of everything is just so much more expensive. We've had a dealing with, of all things in the world, porta potties. And this city has a ridiculous amount of porta potties, by the way, but anyway, we've reduced that dramatically because our 3-year contract expires at the end of May, and we were paying $70 a month. Now, in order to get a porta potty, we're paying $150 a month for the same porta potty. So, I mean, it's just, everything is just so much more expensive. And that, we couldn't get, no one had them. We ended up with one company that said they could give us a total of 5, I think. So we had to cut porta potties from a couple of locations because we just can't get them.
so many things going through my head that I can't say on mic, but we do think we need to appoint you not only tree warden, but the potty pool.
Porta
Potty warden.
Can I just say one more thing that the MMA guy said about ARPA funding? Just thinking about, because I was just thinking about how we're thinking about our budget and what we're gonna pay for and what we're gonna cut, but one of the things I think we always need to keep in mind, just like the capital plan, is how to find more money that doesn't come from the taxpayers. And this guy said, stay in contact with your county ARPA decisions and sort of show up for those decisions because they have way more money than we have, which they do. So I don't know if we have someone who is connected to, like, the Hancock County people and when they make their decisions and how they make their decisions, and can we go and ask them for money and all that kind of stuff.
So that would be a great place for that track, because people from the entire county use that track.
I just put a little star by it.
How you doing over there?
Unfortunately,
suffocated.
the counties do have, all the counties have a lot of ARPA money, and most of the counties are sitting on the ARPA funding, so it hasn't, I haven't heard that Hancock County is any different in terms of opening it up for discussion and debate and looking for applications. So I think that's part of the unknown at this point, is what ultimately they're going to do with those dollars. It's been, and other municipalities have had much larger ARPA funds than what we have. And then just to, I think, to make it even more frustrating for us is, I don't know if you heard this morning, but the state is looking at almost $300 million more of surplus than what they anticipated in revenue. So all this, there's money sitting out there, and at the local level, it's not the reality. We're all in municipalities dealing with tight budgets, costs going up. and increases to property taxes, so.
So that means we're gonna get another check in the mail that we don't need?
I didn't even say, don't get me there.
Well, I just think it means we also just need to
Save
be
your
really-
checks, use it for your tax bill.
We really need to be vigilant about when that money comes, so that we don't miss any opportunities to
Okay.
get that money when that money is available, whether it's from Hancock County ARPA, whether it's from the state, whether it's from grants.
I think, not to go on a rant or a tangent here, but I think we're all sitting here, faced with something that no one at this table wants to talk about. You know, you can only raid the closet so long before we have to rethink about how this goes forward. Certainly, there's gonna be a tax increase this year. There's just no two ways about it. Everything, like you said, is going up. I think a little step beyond that is, you know, we've got to rethink about how things are done. And you can only look in the closet and cut $5,000 out of your paper budget for so long before you gotta shut that door and open up a bigger door. And I'm not sure tonight's the night to do that, but, you know, we're faced with an increase, we're faced with shortcomings, and there has to be some adjustments made. Beyond what's made, the decision that's made for this tax year coming, is I think we have a bigger picture to look at. Like you said, where is the, we've got X amount of people paying the bills, you know, so where does this other monies come from? And, you know, is there such a thing as investigating for another year, a payment in lieu of taxes plan? I don't know all the details that goes to that, but is there a way that you ask for monies from unconventional sources and stop managing paper clips and start thinking about the paperclip manager? And I hate to say these words, but we've got some big changes coming in the next 5 years, and there'll be some tough decisions made.
I don't disagree with you at all in terms of, part of it is Ellsworth being, the nature of this city is different than surrounding communities. It is. So when we have our, you know, when taxpayers look at it and they compare us to Hancock or Lemoyne or any one of the surrounding communities, it's not an apples to apples comparison. And so it's not a good way to look at, well, how are we doing as a city with our costs and tax rate and all of that. At the same time, we're also dealing with, and the library is an example, but so are many other things that we have in the city as, for lack of a better way to describe it, as a service center. We serve a larger community, and if we're going to do that, the community is saying, yes, we want this, well, there's a cost to that. And if we're going to be a service center, there's going to be a cost. It's going to be higher than it would be in these other communities. And if that's what the taxpayers want, then that's the result, is that it costs more and taxes are going to be higher. If they don't want that, then we're faced with, where do you make cuts? And that you have to trim that down and make those decisions. And you know, what we give to, one of the areas I want to go back on is discussing what we give for social service and other organizations in the community. There's no basis for it. I've raised this since I've been on the council. We don't operate from a common perspective in terms of why are we giving this amount to this organization. It's just been historical. They asked and the council said, yes, we'll give it. We have one organization receiving 50% of the recreation budget that we allocate. Why? Is it serving a purpose? Do we know that? Those are the kinds of things that I think we have to do as a council, whether it's this council, future councils, it should make more sense, there should be more of a rationale so that the community can weigh in on it, so they can actually have an input in terms of understanding the council is gonna vet it based on this, and I want to say I'm in favor of that or I'm against it, but right now it's just left for blind advocacy, and then individually we make those kinds of decisions. So it gets to your point in terms of, we've got some tough decisions of what do we want to be as a city, and recognizing whichever direction we go, there's going to be a cost. There's either a cost to the taxpayers, or there's a cost to the resources that we have in the community. There's no in between.
And this will be, this year with the comprehensive plan coming forward, I think is gonna be a good time to really think about that, because we're gonna get so much community input. John and I are on that committee, and there are just so many different plans for getting input from different people. So I hope that will give us the picture of really, to answer the question that you're talking about. What do people want if they're gonna live in Ellsworth? Obviously, they don't want, if you're living in Ellsworth, you're not saying, I'm gonna live in the town based on what my lowest possible taxes are, because you live in Ellsworth knowing that you're gonna pay those taxes and knowing what you're getting for them, so.
So, I need something, people.
Would you like to-
You're gonna hold
do you wanna
another
go
meeting? No, I don't wanna go home, because
I wanna go.
What are the,
because if we're gonna have another meeting Thursday night, I need to know what I need to do. I need to know what I need to do to prepare, what department heads I may need to tap into, to have them here for discussion.
So now that me personally, now that you've given me the changes that you've made, and I can kind of see what's here, I think there are certain areas, I would like to talk about capital improvements a little more. I would like to, you want to talk about social
Yeah,
services
social
and some of those
services.
things. I just want an opportunity to go through this and understand the numbers, because I just really haven't yet. I don't, I asked a lot of questions tonight.
Could
No, go ahead.
But on Thursday, could we go department by department and just thumb through that, or has everyone
Get an
already thumbed through
understanding.
that? And,
Or we could each say, like, if you say I wanna talk about capital, that's what I thought, if we all just said, what do I wanna actually talk about? Okay, I wanna talk about capital, I think we all wanna talk about outside agencies, cause that is crazy and we have to make a decision. So if we each said which department we want to talk about, or feel like there's more to be said, then we'd give you an agenda.
I don't think that you need to make any more cuts yourself. I mean, you've given a good recommendation and you've done everything that you can. I think we need to, at least I know I need to have a little bit better understanding of what's here again. And we come up with questions and, where are we? We do need to know about the leases because we have to make that decision too.
I mean, how much would you have to cut to make
I don't know, I tried
a
to
big
do it.
impact on $600 raising taxes on a $250,000 property?
Is
Well,
it a
we
mill?
cut out a $400,000 dredge, and it didn't even change half a mil.
That's what I mean.
So
right, because you're at 1.4.
It's almost $1 million for a mill, roughly.
It's
It's
a little
more than
different
that,
now.
right?
It's like probably
1.5?
what were people paying when the mill rate was higher, say in 2020, 2019, when the valuation was?
The valuations were
Obviously,
lower.
Right, mill rate was higher, valuation's lower, that checks out, but what were people paying for a,
$200,000
if
house?
we,
On a 200, so when it was
Yeah, or-
1877, on 200,000, it was 3754.
But now that $200,000 house isn't $200,000,
right,
it's more like
we would have to
$255,000.
reverse the
Yeah, right.
5%.
Yeah,
So-
right.
So that's, yeah. Well, like, where are the tolerances, like?
You'd have to cut so much to make a difference.
Well, to speak to Mr. O'Halloran's point, you're gonna have to, the only way you're gonna significantly impact where we are right now with this budget is positions.
Right.
You're gonna have to cut positions. And
So which
I
ones
know
are
no one
cut?
around this table wants to do that, but that would be my question is, which ones are you gonna cut? Because there is not a department in this city that anyone who knows anything about the departments in the city would sit here and say, has extra personnel that they can spare to lose. That's not gonna dramatically impact the service that's provided to the city. And we talk about the library closing one day because of lack of personnel. You take that impact and you put it into the rest of the city, which are, you take your public safety, you look at your highway department. I mean, these are critical infrastructure needs for the city. And if you reduce their staffing and impede their ability to provide the service that they provide to the city, you're not talking about somebody not being able to check out a book. You're talking about somebody losing their life, or somebody having to wait an extended period of time for police presence or fire presence, or to get we get complaints now about the roads, both the condition of them being plowed, them being cleared, the sidewalks, so.
What were you saying now?
Well, I just want to understand the trends in a more broad scope. So it sounds, I mean, based on what you're saying, Glenn, is really the only way to go is to cut positions. What, calculator mode? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
Cutting positions, just as we've been talking about with the school and the library, cut services. The question is, do we want to see that happen in the town? Do we want to see the town instead grow? Great, this is good rhetoric, but like the real question is what happens when the town grows? Do more people come in? Is there more value? Valuation goes up, mill rates come down. I just want to understand on broader strokes, if we keep making decisions that support the staff and support a growing community, and that brings people in and people see that the school is more competitive and more services, ambulance services, library services, and more people want to live here, higher valuation means a lower mill rate. It also increases prices of everything. I mean, does anybody have any thoughts to help me kind of understand this?
Much more businesses would probably mean more tax revenue toward, to alleviate some of the, I mean, it's a residential community, there's not tons and tons of businesses in Ellsworth, so it's the residents that are paying the taxes with the exception of a few businesses. If there were more businesses,
They pay more of the burden. More people means businesses do better.
I would think, I don't know
Is
if
that
I'm
how
right
a
or
town
wrong, but.
grows? I mean, is that?
I mean, businesses seem to pay higher, tax base than I do for my house. I mean,
And its population is growing. We continue to see, we've got the new development coming in, that's the latest, at what, 72 units?
So-
72 to 150 people.
but what do they pay for property tax?
Well, that they won't, the owner of the apartment complex will, so there'll be some tax growth, but it's so nuanced, because you could then say that those 72 to 150 people are going to add to the local economy. They're gonna support local businesses, so there's always these pros and cons and twists and turns of how you actually, what do you realize in economic gain? The
Right.
reality is that they are coming, and the more families we have, we heard this from the school is growing, the expenses there is, we've got for the foreseeable future of the city, a lot of growth, a lot of expenses, and if we start cutting, we're gonna cut to a point that people are not gonna be happy and the city's not gonna run smooth. What do we shut down City Hall for 2 days?
No, like I said, I just think we need to get more businesses flowing in here and fill up some of the empty lots that are empty, and get businesses that are adding to the tax base, and not minimal amounts, but, sizable amounts.
The thing with businesses is you need employees and you need housing. So it's
Well, yeah, but I mean-
it's a cyclic, it's just a big cycle, and that's, I mean, you talk in the business community, what's their number one complaint in the business community?
Oh, I know.
Employees. And then when you talk to people who want to live here, we have employees, city employees who can't find housing. So
I know.
it's,
Yeah, but when they do, they like it here, at least my employees, when they do find a place to rent, because nobody can afford to buy that I hire, but when they rent here, they stay here, they like it here.
Well, what stage is the whole big development down behind the bowling alley? I mean, what stage is that at? They've
they
done,
never come back.
they never came back.
But I think that, to me, the point is that we are here as stewards of the city. The city is growing. We owe it to the city to not just cut it into oblivion, but to find ways to keep it moving forward and growing and developing so that these other things can grow around it.
Responsibly.
That's how I think about it.
Looking at everything responsibly, like the,
Yeah. But not in a like, let's just cut everything to the ground kind of way, but how do we keep keep the city moving in the direction it already is to keep it a great city to live in?
Counselor O'Hara.
I think we're in an interesting spot here, and I don't see any way around where we're at. But again, going forward, we need to rethink the whole process of, do you cut, do you grow, do you I keep getting back to the closet thing. I mean, we can only manage that ream of paper so long before you've got to have a different mindset. And we're in a tough spot with this budget because it's, we have people in Ellsworth that are suffering as it is, and their expenses have gone crazy, and asking them for more is tough. But we've all, I think people expect a little bit more because everything else is costing. We all know that in our personal budgets, that it's pretty tough. But looking forward, like you said, I've heard the comment more, more businesses, more businesses. I've jotted down a whole bunch of things that have come to mind in the last week, and one of the things, and it's a good time to bring it up, is more businesses. And I'm not suggesting this, I'm asking this. The city has these impact fees to pay for infrastructure over a certain area in the city, correct? I've heard the story Cards Brook, Cards Brook, is that fair? I know up around Walmart, impact fees, such. At some point, do you do some cost analysis and do you forgo that and bring in the bigger taxpayers? I don't know. I'm not
I
suggesting
don't think
either way.
that's what's stopping those people. It's,
Well, what's
It's the
stopping
retail.
them though? I mean,
It's
there's
not those-
land,
yeah.
it's
Because-
not being developed, there's big stores up there already,
But the thing
why?
about the impact fees is that the city put the money in there. If they were going to be coming in and we hadn't done that work, the DOT was going to make them pay to do that work. So we've saved them that change, and that's the whole reason we did that and did the impact fees. Because at the time, it was retail, the city was a retail place, and they were going to do this, there were going to be a whole bunch of
60 different stores.
60
coming
different
in
stores
on
coming in and all of
Pirate.
this stuff, and they didn't do it. And that was one of the biggest complaints, and it's the same thing on Beckwith Hill and the whole area is they had to go through traffic plans and have to make improvements to the road every single time someone wanted to build, and it was all on their traffic count. We took care of that. They don't have to do that now. So that's why they pay the impact fee.
Right, but it's not working. And
But it's
so,
because
but
WS Development owns all of that land,
Well-
and they've made the decision, the conscious decision, not to develop, because I'm telling you, they're developing in Augusta and they're developing in Bangor, and it's expensive.
Well,
It's not
I'm
our
sure it
impact
is. I'm
fees.
just saying that it's just another thing to look at going forward, that it's not, it doesn't appear to be working, and yes, the city spent the money, but is there, you may never get that money back at this rate. So there's just other things that need to be thought about. I'm not suggesting that we need to do it. I'm just saying that
But
we've
that-
got to stop managing the cost.
That will also, though, the business attraction plan that we've hired the consultants for will talk about that. And that will be part of the discussion. They also should hopefully tell us about, what the ratio should be for commercial development versus residential development because of the other, residential it comes with children and it comes with, a lot of needs, but it also, helps the schools. And residences don't really pay for the cost. It's the businesses that having those businesses come in is what does help pay for the cost, but they also have their own issues. So they should, hopefully, those consultants will help us with that.
May I just say that, this is a brainstorming session, and it's turned into more of a brainstorming session, but to get to the material facts, it's obvious no matter what we do, if we carve out another $500,000 out of this budget, we're still faced with some big increases for everybody in this city.
And, we have a $2 million increase at the school
Just
department,
at the school
just in the school,
alone.
and so the city can't make that up. Our budget's not big enough to
Any,
make that change like that.
is there any relief in undesignated surplus in this case to lessen the?
Good question, we need an audit.
We can guess
No,
what it
not
is
to
if we
point,
want.
I'm just saying, hey, look, when the police thing happened, there was $6.9 million undesignated surplus.
And we voted to spend $1 million of it, so now you're down to 5.9.
Right, but my
so-
point is that number, does it make sense to talk about that on Thursday? Is there some part of that number that could offset some of this? I realize it's Band-Aid on Band-Aid, but it may soften some of that curve if it's decided that there's enough. At 7 million, there seemed to be enough. Is there, what's the ratio of undesignated surplus compared to budget? Do you try and keep enough to run 4 months of catastrophes? At what number? Is there something there that we can?
And I think we should talk about that. And if there's any way of getting some idea, that would be
4 to
helpful.
6 months, and I think when the auditors and I last spoke, it was right around $5 million.
So if we could just, I think putting that, and I too, as I said earlier, Band-Aids aren't great in terms of it, but I do think that one of the things that I think this discussion has proven is that the council should get more focused in discussing to be innovative. And Ellsworth is a tourist town. We do not benefit as a community in terms of the government side, the taxpayer base, from that tourism industry the same way that other communities. Look at what Bar Harbor did. Bar Harbor and the installation of the paid meters didn't stop tourists. Nobody complained, it didn't keep people away, and they have made millions of dollars. And in fact, the businesses were in favor of that. It's an example of being innovative around and benefiting from the people coming to visit our communities. Unfortunately, the state doesn't allow us to have local taxes, but that should be something that should be, I think we should be talking with our delegation to say enough is enough, that the community should be able to benefit. We should be able to at least have the option to talk about some of these things so that we take the burden away from our community and we share that with people coming in and using our resources. And if we can create some innovative ways of diversifying the tax base, I think it's better for our community.
Well said.
I was just gonna say that in Europe, they, in some places, they have those little potties that you have to pay for, and that would solve the potty problem. Just came to me in a blinding vision.
It goes up,
And I never have the quarters.
and there's a sensor, so if you're like really jittery, you pay more, because you've got to get in.
That's right, and they know it.
So, this year goes up, so then next year, is there anything in this budget this year that isn't gonna be necessary next year, Or everything's just gonna keep going up,
It's gonna
right?
keep going, I mean, your capital stuff changes year to year, but your operation budgets,
Not gonna change.
they're not
It's
gonna change
keep
much. You
going up.
have your contractually obligated pay increases for your union folks.
Yeah.
And then outside of, which is, again, like the school department, 80% of this book is all revolves around your employees, their benefits, and their salaries.
And so next year, instead of being what it is this year, it's gonna be more, no matter what. School,
Unless you,
city.
yeah, unless you can find ways to
So-
offset.
The only way to really offset is to move another 10,000 people here to own property and pay taxes, or a bunch of businesses, if we can get, I mean, you're not gonna do it by, it's not gonna change unless you cut people or you add people. You add to the tax base somehow.
If you
Don't
get
forget,
10,000
we're-
people here, you're gonna have to
Well,
increase
that's
all
what I'm
your
saying. I
other
mean-
services, so, I mean, like, yeah, so.
I understand what you're saying there too, but you either add a bunch of people, you add a bunch of businesses, or you just get another raise in taxes next year, because the same amount of people paying more and more and more every year.
Or you get creative with tourists and creative with people in the county. that
I mean, we
use
have
it.
people all over the world that use our roads every day. They don't pay one penny towards our roads. I mean, they
Toll
stop
booth
at
on
a store and buy something to eat.
A potty
Yeah,
toll
but that
booth.
money doesn't go to us. That money goes to the state, right? Sales tax. It all goes to the state, so.
I'd just like to throw out one thing that, don't forget, we're, as gloom and doom as this may seem, we're in an incredibly period of inflation here. And it isn't always gonna be this mean. I mean, everyone is experiencing this situation. It's not just Ellsworth. I'm sure like towns are sitting around the table having this same conversation.
No matter what, it isn't gonna go down, because everybody's paying their employees more, everybody's doing more. It can't go down, it's gonna have to either equal out or go up. It's not gonna go down.
And that guy from Brewer said their mill rate was 22, so we're doing better.
And, I mean, most cities in Maine are higher than Ellsworth by a lot.
So it'd be good to have some information, because we are a service center, what those other service centers are paying for, what their mill rates are, just for comparison purposes. I know you
Some are
have
as much as
some of
40.
this. So the other thing I'd like to see before our next meeting is a year-to-date budget report for the wastewater, water, and the general fund. Just to kind of see where we're at right now, and I know it probably doesn't include encumbrances and all that because we haven't voted on it, but just to kind of see how much we have spent.
And those numbers are, unaudited. Obvious,
Yeah, but no,
I
for
know it's
this,
like
no,
obvious,
this
but-
current fiscal year, for two,
Yeah.
three, yep.
For no reason at all other than to just kind of know, like, what do they say, 600,000 in ARPA funds? If you took that off, every bit of it spent this year, it would only save $100 per taxpayer probably, right?
Well, I will
Or
tell you.
less.
I will tell you right this minute, just for kicks, I will take out the library's funding at 632, because that's probably about what we have. Mill rate is still 17.14.
Yeah, I
I
just,
mean,
not
it's
even a half a mil.
changing.
to get the mill rate to 17, we'd have to take a little over 1.4 million.
Yeah.
And at 17, you're still paying almost as much as you're gonna pay, so it's not enough money to take and do away with doing something and making,
Yeah, you're saying why?
I mean, a lot of the stuff, like the school stuff, roofs and stuff, it's been years it's been leaking, and then all of a sudden this year we're paying for it because, now you have to, because for 10 years ago when it started leaking, they didn't fix it.
Yeah, I agree with, in terms of capital and stuff. I do think there's some value in, I think we should have a basis for some of the decisions. And so I'll go back to the social service, the organizations that we fund. I just, to just fund, because it's just been there always for the last 5 years, doesn't, to me, isn't a good reason. And that's why I think, even though it's not gonna, even if we cut the whole thing, it's not gonna amount to much. But there should be a consistent rationale about why we do that.
Tony, did you find that policy?
There's a,
We have
yeah,
that,
there's
but we have the
policies,
social
there's a
services.
fund
Yeah, but we don't
balance
use it,
ordinance.
is the point.
Yeah, I
It's-
know, but
it's-
I
we-
couldn't find it.
It's in there somewhere. I mean, the council voted on it years ago.
Yeah, the justification is important when people ask.
Because remember,
Unified.
even-
Yeah, it's in previous budget books,
So
because I would always include it.
It's, a lot of this stuff though, the can got kicked so long that now we have to pick up the can and
Pay for it.
we're paying for it.
Although I would say that they're also, because it's easy at this point in time to always just see a little window. There, over the last several years, there has been movement in terms of leveling that out. Tammy, you know, when we started the capital planning, and look where Lisa's at in terms of requesting. I mean, we were purchasing trucks in emergency meetings because they were breaking down and we didn't have a plan. And we were asking for 2 a year. That has leveled off. So I think there have been incremental
Smart
gains
moves.
that have happened, and I'm very encouraged. I mean, this discussion that we've had tonight and that we've had with this budgeting process, I'm really encouraged by it because we're having good discussions. We're diving, I've never seen so many people grab their calculators and talk about numbers and really get into the weeds of the budget, and listen to it and raise points and to do it respectfully. I think we have the opportunity. Is it gonna go up? Absolutely. There's no way around it. But the budgeting process doesn't end with this budget. It's just the beginning of a process. And if we continue the momentum in terms of the council and then the next council that comes into place, and that just continues in terms of all the work that's happening, we can lead the city forward and we can eventually find an answer. Inflation will go down, but maybe new opportunities will also be created, and 5 years from now, we will have a thriving community and the tax base will be even less because we've been able to plant the seed, and we didn't wait 9 months to just do it at budgeting season. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think that we're setting a good foundation to move forward.
Yeah, I think there's lessons to be learned about, like, if a roof's leaking, you gotta fix it. You can't let it set for another 2 or 3 years. It's gonna get worse. And then you're gonna pay for massive repairs and I think that's happened.
So with that said, I'm not gonna be here Thursday. I have a work commitment, so good luck.
So
If
just
you
to
could solve
recap-
everything by Thursday, that would be
Just
really.
recap real quick. So for Thursday, capital, outside agencies, auto lease, hopefully we'll have that information. Year-to-date financials for water and wastewater. Tammy?
In general fund.
In general.
In general fund. And light community mill rates. That's
Could I throw one more in there?
Sure.
I have complained about the wastewater treatment plant losing money since I've been here. And if we could have another discussion about that situation. There's a $75,000 request in there for a pump of some kind. And that's a $75,000 request because we're accepting sewer by truck.
That's his extra pump. Did that get approved? Yeah, we do need to look at that.
Because I don't, and I just want to throw this out one more time in a different language, and I've used the language with you. 4 cents a gallon does not compute $20 for 500 gallons of sewer to take in at the sewer plant. There's no way they can handle that for the price of lunch. And this $75,000 pump goes away if you stop taking truck sewer. I'm not saying do that radically, but there is a problem there. 2 accounting firms, Moody's, have all identified that as a problem. And we really need to look at that situation. Maybe it's
Charge a lot
increase
more.
the money, right, whatever. There's no way we're handling that for a $20 bill. You can't buy lunch for $40 anymore.
That might be one of those things, we can discuss it Thursday, but instead of buying that pump, is we hire someone to, like you had mentioned before, hire someone to.
Let's get a real, I mean, we're losing,
Yeah.
that place is losing money.
Have someone come through and tell us how much it cost us to take that, through that process.
Yeah, and look at our rates, because
And look at our
there was a
rates.
plan that the rates were going to go up, like we
Yeah.
put it in place, and then every year we were gonna look at it, but then COVID hit.
Trucks aren't coming from Old Town to Ellsworth to dump their sewer, because we're nice people.
can't
It
imagine.
could be, yeah, I mean,
They're coming
it would be
because-
worth looking at raising it up and.
Well,
if you're
we're,
gonna
we're
pay-
buying a gallon of milk for $3 and we're putting it on sale for $2.
That could be.
So will you conclude that on Thursday too?
We will.
Can you
Sorry
resolve
to
that?
burden you with that, Glenn, but
No, but
that
can I-
is
Yes.
a
Can I-
real
If
area.
it's not
That's an
enough,
answer.
it's not enough, I mean.
Can I just
but-
add something to the Thursday thing too, when we talk about outside agencies? I still want someone to explain the TIF funding. Someone told me that we could maybe use TIF funding to fund our Main Street America organization, so if that's true, then that's worth thinking about. I don't understand TIF funding.
Yes, Jen,
You knew
There
that,
she
it's
is.
like you knew.
I'm all,
So it
I'm all
may be
set on
even-
how, what it is, but
Yeah,
I
I
just
don't
want to
need
know
it.
how much it is. I don't need that, seriously.
Thank you.
I've dealt with tech. tips.
You don't need it.
You don't need,
I need it.
Actually, I think we need
feel
a
like I've read this
whiteboard
before.
and so to like drop it.
I will never, I can read
swear
this
I've read something.
5,000 times,
I will
Thank you.
explain
but
it.
I will never
What I don't
understand
know
it.
I bet you
So,
can get it on an audiobook at the library.
Nobody has been able to explain
Oh, not on
it
the
to me.
Michelle and I can.
I'm thick-headed.
Nope.
Actually, it's like in the current.
Do we have, is the TIF information in here? Because I don't
No.
remember seeing that.
No.
No, it was like a separate
thick-headed,
thing, because
Tammy.
Jana asked us about the Union River Center for Innovation,
So,
but it was like
yes.
separate from the budget.
So we should have.
So we need to look
Yeah,
at what,
Tony and I worked on
It's
it
very
the other day.
what we have for TIF funds.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you all.
We need to look at what we.
Good luck Thursday.
I also have an amortization schedule for our newest one.